I was in One World Trade Center.
A lot of us know what today is. Of course, we know it's 9/11, and this is something in history that I would never forget. I was 14 years old in the 9th grade, and all I remember, the teachers were running around like turning TV on. It was going to each teacher room, and the students were looking at each other like, what's going on? And I remember my teacher, Miss Nixon was her name. I remember it like it was yesterday. She turned the TV on, and it was showing like the towers. By the time she turned the TV on, we can see that one airplane had hit the towers. Being kids, we didn't know what was really going on, and she just immediately started just crying with tears rolling down her face, and we were looking like, what is going on? So as the day went on, we finished school, got home. Our parents were like, we have to go get gas because they're saying the gas is we're not gonna have gas anymore to put in the cars. People were going to get water, getting food, and not knowing. And I talked to my mom, and she was like, well, there was an attack on the World Trade Center, and they're saying that they were terrorists that did it. And come to find out, she was crying like terribly because one of our relatives worked in one of the World Trade Centers. So she was crying. We were calling other family members. We got a hold of his mom. She was crying. Kept calling him, couldn't get an answer. Y'all, he ended up surviving. And what saved him? He was off that day. He did not have to go in that day. And normally he works a lot. Like my cousin, he worked a lot. He's of course retired now, but for some reason he took that day off, and that's what saved him from not being inside of the World Trade Center. But when I tell you, when I found out, because I'm an empath, I get emotional just watching these stories of me doing the Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita. It makes me emotional. I get very emotional behind this, and then it's just a part of history for me and a lot of people. Like when these dates roll around, you automatically think of what happened during this time frame. And as I always do, I'm going to let these videos play, because when it's videos like this, I don't like to pause them, as I keep saying, because it's me showing my respect and letting the videos play and people tell their stories and explain what went on during that time frame. So I'm just gonna let them play. Also, I'm going to be showing clips of people escaping out of the Twin Towers on 9/11, people that were around the Twin Towers on 9/11, and then it's going to be videos of people talking about where they were at on that day. So these videos are for entertainment purposes only and allegedly.
And what was it like in there? Did they start evacuating?
Yeah, as soon as it got hit, I was thrown to a window. So I was very lucky to get out. There's a lot of people that didn't get out. There's a lot of people coming down the stairs burnt up. It's bad.
Were there other people that were hurt or lying
there? There was a lot of people hurt. They were lying on the floors, coming down the stairs. A lot of people had asthma attacks while they were coming down. It was bad. It hit in One World Trade Center, it hit somewhere on the 67th floor. I was on the 56th.
And was it chaos trying to come down the steps?
Yes.
What was it like? Describe it for us.
Everybody was on top of each other trying to come down, and then somebody finally calmed the crowd down.
I don't know what else to tell you. We came from the 82nd floor, and I don't know what the crews are. I don't know. I hope to God you're okay. That's all I can say. I don't know what. We saw a shadow. It looked like a plane. Next thing we know, it was boom. The floor started shaking. And then we saw debris fall down, and next thing we know, we had to get out of the building. We stuck on the stairs for a while. We finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby. It was this big explosion.
And I saw a big airplane over my head, very low, and I looked up and I thought, what in the world is this plane doing here? It's too low. And I looked up behind me and I saw this huge airplane crash into the side of the World Trade Center. And then I was in shock, as was everyone, and we were standing there talking, how could something like this happen? And then all of a sudden a smaller airplane slammed right into the other tower. I saw both of them happen. It was horrible.
Can't even look at it, because all I can see are people. I don't see a building, I see people. People hurt. Children without mothers and fathers tonight. So I ran to the phone and I called my daughter's school to make sure that my daughter knew I was okay, and my family knew I was okay, and we let people use the phone to call their families, because that's all that matters.
I can imagine what happened on the other side. And I'm just glad that none of my family in there. That's from what I know.
And as we were standing outside the building, we just seen a whole front side of the building just fall.
Boom, boom. That's all I heard.
That must have been such a terror to actually be here and witness this.
Yo, I done seen people get shot and stabbed, but this I never seen
as
this
we know
before.
of, it was 2 planes that crashed into the World Trade.
That's what they said.
Somebody happened to the Pentagon, right?
Yeah.
No, what happened?
There's a plane that crashed in the Pentagon too.
Well, somebody had just told me when I was over there. They said it had to be a terrorist.
This is a terrorist attack. Jesus. In America? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say.
Can you even find the words for the people?
I just got to just say for myself, just thank God I'm alive. And to come out to find out a terrorist, because I can't even be angry. It's senseless. And people die senseless. You mean tell me this building fell down senselessly? I don't know what to tell you. I don't know.
Plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere. I don't know. And I don't know. Everybody just doesn't know where to go. They won't let. Everything is blocked off. You can't even. They're telling us to get out, but there's nowhere to go. And then I heard that another plane hit. Oh my God.
All right.
What happened?
Go north.
What happened here?
Dude, man, the goddamn's gone. It blew up. I don't know. I came down. I'm alive.
Where
I just want to know if my wife is alive. I was on 82.
82?
Yeah.
How'd you come down the stairs?
Stairs.
What was that like? Panic?
No, it was calm until I got down. Then the top came down.
What was that like when the top came down?
All right, look at me, man. It was fucking frightening. It was frightening as all hell. Come on.
The loud rumble? Tell me about that.
I don't know. I don't remember anything after that. I just crawled out. But I lost my people. I don't know where they are.
No, it didn't go through. What is your 20? Where the hell can I meet you? I'm across the street from the Marriott, man. A second airplane, a 727 just rammed into the building. Where do I go? Do I go home?
U.S. Airways gets slammed into. I saw them like that. But that
Hello, Joe.
Yo, I'm gonna get out of the city, yo. I ain't staying here.
Look at the second building.
Oh my God! You're right. Oh my God, you saved my life. You saved my life. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God.
Barbara Crowley.
Crowley.
NYU Medical Center.
Okay, tell me what you know.
All I know at this point is they're trying to establish an outdoor hospital facility like we've set up at Chelsea Piers, a triage unit for the personnel that are attending to the scene, not to the injured in the scene. They can't get in to get any casualties out at this time. They don't know the extent of it at this point. What we're doing now is going up to get medical supplies, to bring down trauma physicians down here, to set up the surgical unit and the triage unit.
Well, I don't know right now. Daphne, don't give up now. Daphne. Come on, don't give up.
I'm just tired, but I'm tired.
It collapsed. The top floors collapsed down. I saw it blow and then ran like hell. Thank God. I'm 69, but I can still run. There's got to be firemen trapped back there, though.
Were you in the building?
I was in the 50th floor of the Millennium Hilton, and I was getting ready to call my wife. I heard the whine of a jet. An American Airlines jet hit the tower. I know about planes. It was either a 737 or a 757. I don't know if they fly the Airbus, but the engine configuration looked like it was a 737. It had the nose down. It was hauling ass. I looked up and I thought, what is this plane doing coming so fast? And it just slammed right into the first tower. Blam.
What about the second explosion?
I think it was just from the heat of the fire. That's my guess. And when that happened, then they told us to get the hell out of the hotel.
Tell me your name.
My name's Doug Eisler.
Spell your last name.
E-I-S-L-E-R from Philadelphia.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
Absolutely not. I've seen at least 10 people fall to their death and just splat like a ripe tomato. It's awful. But it's I don't know who was at the controls or what was going on in the plane, but it was not a bomb. It was an American Airlines jet that crashed into the tower.
And then I'm walking out, and some reporter's interviewing me, and I'm standing next to John, and then the top of the thing blew up.
Probably like the orange and blue sign. Wow.
The body's falling down.
Didn't you see it? I mean, people just throwing themselves through the window.
Can I have your name, first and last name?
My name is Kwame. It's Kwame. Leduc, Leduc.
My dad was a firefighter. On September 11th, it was just an ordinary day. We had an appointment with Macy's. My dad had done an overnight in the city, I believe. Mom called my dad the night before and said, Kenny, she doesn't want to come into this appointment. A lot of during the week, I would go into the city with my mom. My mom decided to go a little bit early and stop by the firehouse. My dad was with Rescue 1 in New York City.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 3.5. My brother was 1. So we went into the city. We stopped by my dad's firehouse. My dad put me and my brother on the fire truck and just spent like good quality time, which it wasn't even supposed to happen. So it was just like so nice. It was just like refreshing because we don't usually go by this firehouse. We went to go to the appointment. We got in the car and my dad like came around to each of our car seats and like gave us a kiss goodbye, which is like so random. Usually you just say, okay, bye dad, like see you later. But he like purposely like came around, which is just, God's like in every single story, in every single detail. I always like say like I almost felt like he knew something was gonna happen. Of course, like he didn't know. We went on our way to our appointment. As we were walking in, my mom points out an airplane up in the sky and says, oh, Tyler, Kristen, look at the airplane in the sky. And it was really low. And my mom used to be a flight attendant and she was like, this is so weird. Why they shouldn't have clearance to fly over a city, especially this low.
That's actually wild that she saw and like pointed out the planes like that.
Yeah. Immediately we hear sirens and there's just fire trucks rushing past, and then my mom goes, look, that's probably daddy, wave hi to daddy. And then immediately the casting agents were saying, you have to get out of here, look at the TV, they're shutting down the bridges, take your kids and get out of the city. My mom put us in the car. No one really knew what was going on, what was happening. Then she hit a standstill of traffic and she decided to get out of the car, and she just watched as the first tower just crumbled. And I remember like dust, and I think I remember papers, but I don't know if that's just like my imagination going crazy. When we got home, obviously we hadn't heard from my dad. My mom went to go check the voicemail machine. There's a recording of like my poppy saying, Katrina, are you in the city? Are you in the city? So later that night, you know, I was just wondering. I always waited by the door, like, where's my dad? Where's daddy? And we didn't know. No one knew anything, literally nothing. And then a few days passed, still nothing. But you always had hope. You just thought, oh, he's working really long shifts to go find people. My mom got a phone call. It was to bring in DNA samples because they were finding firefighters, their helmets, their haligans and stuff. The day we got home, my mom was watching the news and she saw Rescue 1's fire truck crushed. And that's when it really kind of hit her. To this day, they actually still hadn't found him. I think there's only like 200 people that were never found, and they're still actually like sifting through the ashes and all the debris. Like to this day, they found his helmet, they found his Halligan. He still never came home. And for so long, I had like this weird feeling that he would just show up. Like I just like told myself like, he's just lost, daddy's lost. And even like after, my mom didn't really know how to tell us. How do you tell a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, you know? And she would always write down what I would say. And I just would always say, he's just stuck on a piece of gum. He's stuck on a piece of gum. Yeah. And I said, we just need to go give him a flashlight. He'll be able to get out. And yeah, he never came home.
We all know about the tragedy that happened on 9/11 in 2001. We all know about the attack on the World Trade Center and to never forget about this tragedy. But how many of us know that the last person found under the World Trade Center rubble was a black woman? Not only was a black woman found, but she was found alive. Janelle Guzman McMillan worked on the 64th floor at the World Trade Center in 2001 when she went into work on September 11th and was one of many victims of the attack on the World Trade Center. On that day, she went to work like any other day and had no idea that she would be buried under the building for the next 27 hours, laying there alive. Although her story was not included in the movie released about the World Trade Center attack in 2006, which I feel like there's very much something to be said about that, in 2011, she released Angel in the Rubble, talking about her experience being trapped in the debris and eventually being found, how she worked through this experience, and how she's lived after that. Janelle is living Black history, being alive today around 53 years old. It's amazing that her story isn't as widespread, considering that we quite literally never forget 9/11 and somehow have managed to forget the last found person.
I have the craziest story about 9/11. So picture this. You're a kid in Ukraine. You're 9 years old. It's September 10th. And you just received the news that you and your family have been approved for the green card to come live in New York City. It's something that my parents were planning for a very long time. And as somebody who grew up watching a lot of American movies, Home Alone 2 was one of my favorites. I mean, everything about New York was like a kid's dream, for me, at least personally. And so I remember on September 10th, on 2001, I'll never forget this, I watched Home Alone and I told my parents the first thing I want to do when we come to New York is I want to go to the top of the Twin Towers. Well, the next day, when we turned on the news, it was everywhere, on every news channel. And as a 9-year-old kid, I thought I jinxed the towers to come down, and I felt awful. And it was something like, as a kid, I can't even describe to you. It was, well, obviously it was my fault, but it's just so crazy of the coincidence that had happened that I was just like, oh my God, was that my fault? As a kid, you know? Anyway, then we moved to America, March of 2002, and I've been to the One World Trade Center now, only because Condé Nast's in there. I've never actually been to the top of it, but every time I'm in that area, the story pops in my head, and it's just such an eerie place to be. Like, if you ever come to New York, it just feels almost wrong to be there, if you know what I mean.
So it has come to my attention that there are whole grown adults that only experienced 9/11 through history books. So I decided to tell the story about where I was and what I was doing when 9/11 happened. I lived in Brooklyn. I attended college in the city in Manhattan, and I was getting ready for class. The building that I was headed to was a block away from one of the World Trade Center buildings and ended up being destroyed during the attack. When I say destroyed, I mean the building collapsed in on itself. So I'm getting ready, I'm brushing my teeth. I had maybe like Good Morning America or something playing on TV, but with the sound off, and I'm listening to music. And I did that every morning just to read the updates at the bottom for the train delays. And as I'm watching the news, I see a plane go into a building. And obviously it didn't dawn on me, right? I asked myself, what movie are they playing at 8 o'clock in the morning? I thought this was the news. And then they played it again and again. And so I stopped and I turned the sound on, and I'm listening to the news anchors explain that a building is on fire because a plane dove into it. At the time, I lived with my grandmother, and I started yelling for her to come to me, like, come see this. But she was also listening to what was happening on NPR, so she was aware. And just as she gets into the room, we watch a second plane. Surreal is not a strong enough word. The aftermath ensues. The news stations are watching people jump from 100-story buildings. You can see the plane hanging out. If I remember correctly, the building is on fire. It's just a lot of aftermath, right? And here are some things that maybe if you're not a New Yorker, you don't know that happened. This is before streaming services and a lot of other things existed. So at the time, regular television existed. Like TVs had antennas and they got, sounds so old. TVs had antennas, excuse me, and we got the signal from the television stations, right? So when one of those buildings went down, the antenna that carried most of the regular television stations in New York City went down with it. And so immediately we only had one station. I think it was either channel 2 or channel 4. No other. So unless you had cable, which wasn't necessarily common at the time, you could only watch one television station. For the same reason, most cell phones did not work in New York City. So on top of literally the first ever attack on American soil that we know of, in New York City, you can't make a phone call unless it's on a landline. You can't, the FAA shut flights down, so you can't get home, you can't, right? They shut the trains down, so you had people were walking across bridges to get home. So you could only watch one news station. You didn't have any cell service. It was bananas. So at this point, you're at home trying to figure out, did this really happen? And the news, the only station you can watch, keeps playing the planes go into the building over and over and over and over and over and over. And at some point, maybe 2 or 3 days later, you realize I'm watching hundreds, maybe thousands of people being unalived in front of my face over and over again. But what else is there to do? Nothing's open. Everything's shut down. There's no other television. All of the radio stations are playing it, are talking about it, that are on. So it was a vacuum. It was a vacuum because it was all we had. It was all we had. So slowly, as phone cell service starts to come back, you check in on your family. I have an aunt that at the time was working at the Pentagon. I checked in on her because there was another plane that hit a side of the Pentagon. And she was okay. But so many people that I knew had lost, everybody in New York, if you hadn't lost a person, you were maybe 2 degrees away from knowing somebody who had lost someone. Trinity Ave Church was filled with posters and flyers of, have you seen me? This person is missing. People who we'll never see again. I think maybe 3 months later, they opened my school back up. But for the people who had class in the building that had been destroyed, they had brought in some trailers. So we were having class in trailers, but the windows showed us either the East River or the Hudson River. I can't remember specifically which river it is. Same body of water. And we're watching, trying to focus in class. And from the window, you can see the barges that would come from Jersey to get, they had machines with magnets that would literally pull at the metal to sift through to make sure there was no more bodies. But pay attention in class. Legit, that was my last summer in New York. I moved to Georgia. I remember getting off the train to go back to class, and the streets were lined with armed guards. Not armed guards, the National Guard. AK-47s, AR-15s, just lined in the street. It felt like a war-torn country. And it probably was at the moment. My school had chaplains there to help and pray with people. It was just... When I went to work, the people wore gloves and masks because also they were threatening anthrax in mail. And so people were terrified that they would open the mail and some white powdery substance would come out. It was just horrific. And to this day, my husband is not from a city. And so the first few times we went to New York, every single time we go to New York, for whatever reason, we have ended up at One Trade. So the first time it was when it was still a hole in the ground. We've been together a long time. The second time they were building One Trade, and the last time we went, we actually got to be inside of One Trade and go to the observatory. It's hard for me. It's surreal. It's grounding. I don't like calling people emotional, so I don't want to call myself an emotional person. but I'm in touch with my emotions, it's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard. But to switch gears really quickly, I chuckled a little bit watching in Fulton County, Georgia. I live in Georgia. Watching Rudy Giuliani get a mugshot. I thought it was hilarious because he was the it boy. He was the mayor of New York City when 9/11 happened. So the country loved him at the time because he could have shit gold. Because he led New York through that. Whether he did it well or not, it doesn't really matter because he was in charge at the time. And so the country loved him. New Yorkers loved him for getting New Yorkers through that. And to see his fall from grace is so ironic to me. But you got to pay what you owe. So anyway, that's my story. If y'all have any questions, you can ask me, but that's where I was and what I was doing and where I was headed on 9/11.
Today, September 11th, I don't know where you were 9/11, 2001, but I was in Munich to give a talk. And my wife was with me in the hotel room. She was in the shower. I was watching German TV. I was watching the news. I don't know German, I know Yiddish, and usually I can make things out pretty well, but as I was watching the news and listening, I was going, man, I must not be understanding something. And then they started to show the video of the Twin Towers, and then I went, oh, I understand what's happening completely. I shouted to my wife in the shower, she came out, we were both stunned as we watched. And then we were stuck in Germany for a week. We couldn't get home, and I rented a car. The only car I could find was a smart car, and we drove around Germany. And what I remember most was when people found out we were American, the outpouring of sympathy, sincere sympathy people had for us. My family didn't lose anyone in 9/11, but that outpouring of people from one country to another showed how we can be connected, how we are connected by a human bond. And it was touching, truly touching. And that's what I remember most, personally, from 9/11.
So, y'all, hey, my TikTok family, it's getting close to 9/11. And my 9/11 story, I'm sure many of y'all remember it like it was yesterday. So I'm going to try to tell it real quick. 2 weeks before 9/11, I fell into this dark depression. Everybody was trying to help me get out of that depression. I couldn't do anything. I wasn't a peer support or a life coach back then, so I didn't have any skills. But it was so dark, that weight on my chest. I kept telling my friend, I was having these dreams. I said, something bad's going to happen. I had a really good ride-or-die friend. She was in Saudi, and she's like, girl, what's wrong with you? I said, I can't stop having these dreams. Something bad is going to happen. I got this feeling. I can't shake it. So my friends took me out to dinner. I mean, everybody's trying to help me get it together, and that was just so heavy. Anyway, I so messed up, took myself to church, and I had this Bible that had a picture of the bombings where the little fireman was holding a baby, and it fell out in church. And I remember picking that picture up, putting it back in my Bible, saying, God, please don't let something like this ever happen again. That was the Sunday before 9/11. So I went on, I kept trying to get over that feeling. I couldn't call it coincidence, call it premonition, call it hunch. I don't know what the hell you want to call it. But I promise to God that happened to me. The day of 9/11, I was so freaking sick. I had a fever, told my boss, hey, I got to go to the hospital, go to urgent care because I was working x-ray. I went over to urgent care. It was approximately 9-something. And as I'm standing in the urgent care, everybody's standing around the TV. And I guess that's when the first plane hit. And I was waiting to see the doctor get shots or open me up because I was having a bad sinus, something going on. Then when I came out, the next plane hit. I went back to work to turn in my letter that I needed to go home, and then when I realized the magnitude, y'all, I was in a full-blown autopilot daze. I didn't know if the world was ending or what was going on. I called my husband at the time and asked him, should I go get our daughter out of school, or should we go home, lock ourselves in? I didn't know what to do. My friend who had been telling something bad was going to happen called me on the phone freaking out. You need to take care of my babies. You said something bad was going to happen. Y'all, when I tell you that was the worst day, I was glued to the TV. I was screaming at the TV with the reporters talking about where our president was because, we were under attack. And I don't think those of us that watched it and felt it will ever forget the sacrifices that our fellow veterans, our firefighters, and our policemen meant that day. I had this little bear, I kid you not. I was walking around with this little 9/11 bear everywhere I went. I had a 9/11 flag on my car. I had the 9/11 button. I was so engrossed in 9/11, and I was just praying for everybody, and my heart was so broken. And the only thing I could remember about that time was like a miracle was won. It was the only time in my lifetime I can remember where we all was together and wanted to do something to protect America. So share with me your 9/11 story. Let's heal together. And I will never forget. Every year I put my horse with the salute to 9/11 and I put up the Twin Towers. What do you do to acknowledge the day? Because I'm telling you, I will never, ever forget that day and the 2 weeks that led up to that day. Have a recovery day, y'all. Write, journal about it if it affects you the same way. Call, check on your buddies. But don't spend it alone if it really triggers you, like I think it still does me in a way. Reach out for help and let people know that you're not okay. There's no weakness in not being okay. The strong people, we ask for help and we get our stuff together and we lean on each other. Have an awesome day, y'all. And I'm praying for everybody that was affected by this tragedy. And I'm giving mad respect to the men and women that stood up to it. Have a good day, y'all.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I am 42 years old, and on the day of the September 11th attacks, I was 19. This is my husband, David. He is 47 years old, and on the day of the attacks, he was 24. I was working the second shift. I wasn't paying attention to the news too much, and I've been seeing a whole lot of media come out because of the recent anniversary of the attacks. And that morning, I was asleep, and my mother came into my room, woke me up, and she said, "Something's happening." So I got out of bed and I started watching the news. American Airlines Flight 11 had struck the North Tower as of 8:46 a.m. and I sat and watched the news as it played out. And at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower. As the buildings burned and the news reporters and first responders came in, I watched sheets of paper fall like snowflakes. And I also watched people jump live on television because that was the better option. The buildings, Twin Towers, were made to withstand the strike of a 727, I believe. But these planes were bigger, larger, and had more fuel in them because they had just recently taken off from their original destinations. I was sitting alone on the couch when the South Tower fell. And when I called out to my mom to say it collapsed, her only words were three. Those people. All those people. That's what she said. She said, all those people. And at the same time, I was still sitting there watching as the North Tower fell. I watched it in real time. Some of my classmates from the class of 2000, I'm from Hunterdon County, New Jersey, and some of those folks lost family members that day. And years later, working for a Fortune 100 financial company, one of my coworkers told me that was the only day he had ever called in sick. So, my husband David was in New York City working that day. So, as someone who survived something that nobody should have to go through, he's agreed to allow me to ask him a few questions regarding his experience that day. So, where were you working in terms of distance from the Twin Towers?
Worked Midtown, so after got out of Port Authority, as I took the bus every day from Bergenfield, I'd walk about 5 blocks due east to the building that I worked in, which is up on like the 10th floor or something like that. So it was a pretty quick walk every morning and every afternoon.
But how far from the Twin Towers?
From Midtown to Financial District, it was probably a couple of miles. Easily over 50, 60 blocks north from the towers.
Okay. How long after the first strike, which happened at 8:46 a.m., did you know about it?
Well, when we were on the bus taking the Helix into the Lake of Tuttle, we all looked out the left window and saw that the first tower was on fire. Well, we didn't see fire, you saw smoke, but some of us were joking on the bus, being like, what kind of idiot in an airplane doesn't see a tower that size? Because,
well, that was the initial thought, was that
right.
The first plane strike was an accident.
Well, yeah, but we're just like, like Jesus Christ, it's a whole ass building. How do you miss it? So
it was also a clear day.
So nobody gave it any thought. We just continued on our routine, reading books, listening to music, doing non-social media since it was 2001. Maybe Friendster was a thing, but
MySpace.
Nobody thought twice.
And the second plane hit the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. Did you hear about it? Did you know?
Yeah, after I got off of the bus, which was probably like, another 15 minutes to 20 minutes after the first tower hit, because Lincoln Tunnel traffic sucks. I stopped at a deli I usually got my breakfast from and heard over the radio that the second tower had just been hit, and that's when everybody went from being joking about it to thinking that, okay, this is serious and deliberate. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like when you arrived at work?
Well,
after all that,
there was no work to be done. We glued our eyeballs to CNN, tried to make phone calls to friends and family, but the cell towers weren't even remotely capable of handling several million phone calls simultaneously. So it took hours for some people to get through. Even the connection to watch CNN was a bit spotty because the towers were also used as antennas for video. So they had to reroute them, I'm sure, to alternate locations. But we just spent the whole day watching.
Well, former President George W. Bush addressed the nation regarding the attacks and declared it an act of terrorism. And shortly thereafter, the Pentagon was struck by American Airlines Flight 77. And also, a brave group of passengers were able to stop the fourth hijacked plane, United Airlines Flight 93, in Pennsylvania. Did you get that news as it came in?
I know we saw the Pentagon crash on television. We had heard about the Shanksville crash, I'm going to assume as well. Maybe not as much detail because since it crash landed in a remote field, there wasn't anybody really around to get it, to get to it for hours. But everybody knew about the fourth plane. Its original destination was probably the White House, and those passengers sacrificed themselves to create, to stave off an even greater tragedy. So.
And you said that there was no phone service.
There was phone service.
Like, what was the phone service, internet, anything connection-wise? You said that it was on top of the tower. So.
Well, I mean, the towers were a major communications hub for data and digital. So I have to assume that when the first one hit, they probably shut off, both towers' reception for using that, but I have no idea. So it's possible once.
Could you see the smoke from where you were?
See it, no, but smell it, yes. Since the streets were completely empty, between the smoke and the general wind tunnel like effects from the north, especially for the north-south streets, you could smell the charring from where we were, and it was very eerie.
How many hours did it take you to leave, to be evacuated from the city? How long were you? Well, first of all, once you at work once you all figured out what was happening, what did you do?
Well, we all sat around because Port Authority closed down all bridges and tunnels, so nobody was getting in and out of getting off of Manhattan Island. So you had several million people suddenly trapped and couldn't get anywhere. And it wasn't until sometime that evening where only ferries were allowed to take people back to New Jersey. So you had tens of thousands of people lining up to get onto ferries that hold maybe a couple hundred people comfortably.
So what'd you do during that time, watching all this unfold?
Talked with coworkers. Actually, during lunch, I remember during lunchtime, after the initial holy crap, what's going on? Some of us just went out for lunch. We're like, well, we're trapped. Somebody had said that there was, a rumor that Dubia already had sent fighter jets to Afghanistan to, take out Al-Qaeda or something, which, at the time I was like, yes, go USA. But this was only several hours after. And there's no way in hell that even if that was legitimate, we would know about it that quickly. So there wasn't much to think. So most of the day, businesses were still open, people were still hungry. We just did what we can, but no actual work was being done because there's no way anybody could concentrate on anything other than what the fuck.
Well, I think the whole world was kind of doing the same thing at that time.
Yeah. It was a gorgeous day too. Otherwise,
It was.
Which was
It
like,
was. It was a beautiful, clear day until the sky was suddenly black and orange.
Yes.
So it took
wasn't until evening.
hours.
We were
hours and hours and hours.
Everybody waited. I know I was waiting for several hours just to get on a ferry, and then at that point I was able to communicate or call my parents, tell them to get in to queue in line on the specific port on New Jersey side to pick me up. At a estimated time frame, because that's the only way anybody was going to get out.
And what was your parents, once you finally got to talk to them?
I mean, they were just relieved I was safe. I can't imagine. Well, now a parent, I can only imagine the absolute horror of realizing your child is potentially in harm's way of something of that absolute magnitude. It's not a damn thing that you can do to help them. So,
well, you're a parent now, so that probably rings a little harder. Can you tell me about what evacuation actually, how it went? Like,
the evacuation itself off of Manhattan was, a lot of cops, a lot of Coast Guard, just directing people, just shepherding people in neat, orderly fashions. Didn't want to have any more panic than I'm sure already was happening, and that part was fine. Outside of that, it was there was no other police or anything, because they were all being diverted to control bridges and tunnels, and everybody, I'm sure there was thousands of them down where the towers fell because of all the chaos and damage and making sure people were okay. So, I mean, if you were trying to go on a robbery streak, that was absolute perfect afternoon to do it, because you couldn't find a cop for forever. So,
do you blame them?
Oh no,
responding and
not at all.
Yeah,
they did. I would have done the same thing. So it was.
Is this a hard thing for you to talk about?
No, I'm just yawning. It's not hard for me to talk about because it's been so long, and I've spoken about it many times to many people. It's still surreal. It's one of those core memory things that 100 years from now, even if I absolutely get Alzheimer's or something, I will be able to recite my day in the city perfectly. So, yes.
A lot of people like to ask, where were you when 9/11 happened?
Usually when that conversation comes up, yep, that's like, I got a story for you.
You were there.
So yeah,
you were there.
I was.
So, evacuation. They put you on a ferry. And how many people were there? Like, what was the mood? What was the crowd? Could you see the smoke from that point?
At that point, I don't. No, you really wouldn't be able to see it, because even though we were on West Side Highway, we're still half an island north from where the towers fell. So, I mean, if I looked at the skyline, I'm sure I would have not seen the towers anymore. But
well, it's kind of like seeing the forest for the trees,
at that
right?
point,
like, you were too close to see.
I don't know the view, because there could have been plenty of. There was plenty. Oh yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, it just smelled like it was just burning everything. But there's so many other built like tall towers in the city. Even if I tried to look towards the financial district from where I was, there'd probably been dozens of other towers in the way. So it wouldn't have been. I mean, if it was something that was very easily to watch, to see from there, I'm sure everybody would have been staring. But no, people just wanted to get home. They were tired and scared and confused and angry, and nobody was in the mood for.
What kind of things were people saying?
That I wish I remembered, but I was by myself. didn't have anybody I commuted with. But whatever background chatter was going on, I don't remember what people may have been discussing. If I had a book or my Game Boy Advance, you know, I was keeping myself
just distracted.
Right.
As much as
this is going to be a long evening, and it was.
And what's been the long-term takeaway, especially now that you're a dad? How did this experience affect you as a person, as a human?
I mean, thankfully, it didn't psychologically negatively impact me in any way. I don't have any PTSD from it in any shape or form, but it did get me into it, fast-tracked me into paying attention to politics, because at that point I didn't care. I would just vote whoever my parents wanted me to vote for. But after 9/11, and then Bush decided to invade Afghanistan and then Iraq under all those false pretenses, by Bush's second election, I was fervently not Republican. And not that I was before, but at that point I was, all my live journal posts back then, I was angry. I always posted about what, you know, Rumsfeld and Cheney and all of them with their lies about the oil, and oh yeah, Saddam has nukes, not really, and yeah, I just became very politically active and I started to pay attention vigorously. So that's the one good takeaway out of it. It would be, I started to pay attention to what our elected politicians started to do, and even if I couldn't do anything about it, I was made aware and I knew what was up.
But you've actually, I think it has actually influenced the way you've done, because now you volunteer as a poll worker for elections, yeah?
I mean, yeah, but it wasn't related to this, but it's kind of a natural, well, at least for me, a natural evolution of, you know, how does the sausage get made when it comes to elections, especially with all the rhetoric going on these days, you know, with QAnon and the conspiracy theorists. But that's a topic for another video.
The reason that we wanted to make this video is because we're finding that the younger, the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha generations, they don't know what happened.
They're going to read about this stuff in history books, which is kind of wild to think about. Like,
we watched it and lived it in real time. And a lot of the videos, unless you can find a specific documentary, you don't see the people jumping out of the windows. And that's a thing that actually happened. Many people did that. And almost 3,000 people died.
Yes.
It has long been my stance that the only way humans, all of us, any race, gender, whatever, anything, all humans, the only way survival can exist is if we're kind to one another, regardless of who we are, what we believe. That's my takeaway.
Don't be a dick. It's a good rule to live by.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I usually say, but I was trying to be serious.
Me too.
But yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, don't be an asshole. So thank you, David.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry you had to live through that.
I'm not. It was unfortunate, but you only get one life, and to go through such tragedy, I can only hope that a lot of our generation as we get into the age of where we are the political majority, that we take those lessons to heart and hopefully don't let it.
And remember, kindness. Gen X, Zennial. Kindness. It's the only hope we have.
Yep.
Especially as we watch our children grow up. We don't want them to have this.
That's the goal. But unfortunately, humanity is miserable at learning from its own lessons and sticking to them. All we can do is try.
All we can do is try.
Mm-hmm.
So, thanks for watching.